Good evening and welcome to Whiskey Wednesday. Joining once again my special co-host, the Ninja Dr. Jason Pittman. Tonight we're going to talk about the importance of building relationships. But I think even a little bit more importantly, which we're going to touch on is, hey, we all make mistakes. So what happens when maybe we've made even a catastrophic mistake where we have to rebuild those bridges that we burned down? I'm your host, Dr. Dan Ford, and this is EchelonOrchid.
Guess who's back?
Ninja, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. You know, I actually hope I got everything right this time. Who knows? I've got some stuff hardwired in. So it's not really exactly how I want everything other than the hard wiring. And, you know, maybe this TV needs to be a little better. And I just realized I still have myself like showing up a little bit in the far corner. I don't want that. It's kind of annoying.
Our
but,
legions of fans will let us know.
well, you know, at least Stoney. If he's not out in the backwoods right now, I don't know what the temperature is down there in Danville, Virginia, but, you know, he might be brewing some of that corn whiskey.
It was a beautiful day here in North Carolina today.
Was it?
Yeah, it felt like spring.
What was the temperature?
Mid 60s, I think.
All right.
Low 60s. It was really nice, man.
That's pretty good. I would take those low 60s any time.
That's my favorite weather.
Yeah, you know, you can get out there and do some physical activity, break a little bit of a sweat, but not so, you know, even when you do and you like go to cool down, you're not like, where's my winter coat?
You're right.
You know,
Well, I'll tell you, man, you know, I've said this before. I've progressively gotten deeper and deeper into cycling. And just yesterday, man, I was watching a video of a guy that I used to ride with in California when I rode outside on the team. And he was racing because, of course, it's nice there. And last lap, he's in 5th place, that's a really good place for somebody that can sprint. It's perfect. And they're going into the last corner, and he wasn't paying attention, and the people in front of him slowed down, and he crossed wheels and crashed, and he smashed himself into the curb, fractured his collarbone. His bike broke in half. It's like, that's a big impact, right? Anyway, reminded me that, yeah, dude, I'm pretty happy riding inside.
yeah, I feel you. Like I like the only activity I want to do outside is golf, and I'm not doing that when there's snow on the ground.
No.
One, you know, I got to tell you, it's really difficult to find your golf ball, no matter where you hit it when there's snow on the ground.
If you get the yellow ones, you just assume somebody pissed in the snow?
Dude, I mean, even still, if there's snow, like a lot of times they'll clear out the fairway. So if you're 100% in the fairway, you're probably fine. But you know, I'm not a professional. What's the likelihood of that? You're just not finding your golf ball, even if it's yellow, because it's going to be in, you know, if it's more than like 2 inches of snow.
Yeah.
And it's not like
Yeah,
it's
man,
going to bounce. Like I just.
As much as I like being outside, if I want to go outside and do an activity, I'm either going to walk the dog, go for a hike with my daughter, or, you know, I still go outside and run every so often. I just really don't have too much interest in riding outside anymore, man. As much as I like it, it's just too dangerous. Now, I'll go for like a leisurely ride, right?
Yeah, sure.
But I don't want to race outside anymore. I crashed enough. I don't miss it. It's not fun.
I don't blame you. It doesn't sound fun.
It's not, dude. Especially when you smash your like $10,000 bike. That's not good.
Well, you know, it could be a lot worse.
Wow. You could die.
Well, it could have been my $10,000 bike.
But dude, check this out, man. And I know this isn't what I'm going to talk about, but the technology fascinates me. And so, you know, I got into racing inside. I did a race this weekend. It was 20 miles, which isn't that far, but it was 3,000 feet of climbing. over 20 miles, which is a lot. And hills are not my specialty. Okay. But I really wanted to try it out because one of the things that has come out in the last few years are these things called rocker plates, which essentially are 2 sheets of plywood with inflated exercise balls. And what it does is it gives you about 13 degrees of rocking left and right.
Okay.
And that makes a substantial difference in the quality of riding because it feels more natural, like you're outside. Because when you're riding outside, you naturally rock back and forth.
Sure.
Oh man, does that make a difference, dude? That's probably some of the best money I've spent on like exercise in a long time.
And how much was that?
That was about $450.
Oh, it's not bad. To give you a more real world experience without the danger of, wrecking into someone and getting hurt and possibly death,
Right. And on top of it, the problem I was hitting is, I usually ride for at least an hour and a half, at least 4 days during the work week.
Right
and
on.
I ride for 2 to 3 hours on Saturday and Sunday. And when you're in a static position, then that starts to hurt. So just having a little bit of rocking action moves it on your sit bones, and it makes it way more comfortable. Let alone you can actually like ride better. Anyway, yeah, I'm fascinated by that shit. Now, to be fair, man, you could have probably built it yourself for like less than $100, but
with how much time and
right.
And it was probably not going to be right the first time, right? So that's the other part.
$450. I ordered it off Amazon. It showed up 2 days later, and all I had to do was take it out of the box and flake 2 red balls, use a little level, make sure everything was set up, and I was done. Whoop, took like 15 minutes. Done.
Which one of the red balls do you have for your mouth?
I had to borrow one from my stash.
So, our topic for tonight, we'll get into that first part. The importance of building relationships. And, I'm going and I go, even we weren't, we had already built a friendship before we even actually met face to face during our doctorate program. Like, I don't even actually, I know, at least from my perspective, because no one really had cameras on in our live. That's pretty much only the professor, and that was some of the time. So I didn't even know what you looked like, but we chatted quite a bit before our first actual residency. Mm-hmm. And one of our other classmates at the time, Tommy, so we all kind of built something up, and we met for the first time to drinks and dinner and stuff. And I don't recall us talking too much about like school or anything like that. It was, hey, we're getting to know each other, right? And I think that those things that's an important aspect of trying to build those connections. And I find many times how surprising it is that people either willfully or unwillfully choose to not do that. Because it's not just about, even like from our aspect, it was, scholarly, but wind up being eventually, colleagues, because we were all in a way colleagues. We were all in the industry in some capacity. And it's not that you can't focus on the one aspect. You got to me, building that relationship is very much so about understanding the person's personal life, professional, academic, whatever you want to say, all the different facets as to what makes that person up, so that you can find things that relate, which finds ways in which, is this a person a part of my tribe or not? Mm-hmm. And the amount of people that just go, nah, I don't need this person to like me. We just have to work together. It's not about like or dislike. It's about building, to me, at least a framework to where we can respect each other or determine whether or not I'm just not going to deal with you. Hopefully we can. I mean, I believe if people have a positive intent, we can find a common ground and work together. Even if we don't like each other, there's a common goal that we can come together with, allies of convenience, so to speak. But you still have to know what that person is, what's their wants, what's their desires, what motivates them. And I find it very fascinating the amount of people in higher leadership positions, management positions, that disregard that concept.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing, man.
I am a doctor. You were there.
I was present. I voted yes.
Yeah.
In fact. Yeah, I think back to, I shouldn't say, I think about the people that I know that I would classify as good or above average or even great leaders. And that's a small number compared to the people that I know or have encountered that I would classify as at best average or just straight up shitty leaders. And it seems to me that perhaps the one thing that differentiates them most materially is exactly what you're talking about, is the people that are at best average believe that leadership consists entirely of showing up and assigning tasks and maybe asking how your weekend was, but not really paying attention to the answer, right?
Yeah.
I think the people that are good leaders aren't necessarily invested in what makes those around them fellow humans more than I assigned you this task that I get it done. Now, that's always important at some level. I mean, because we're conducting business, it has to be managed and handled. But that's not the essence of it as I see it.
But I think very true. One of the things that came to mind as you were saying that, let's say, one of the people that I am honored with being able to lead them, and I really do believe that. If I don't take the true time and really invest that time, what if that person's grandfather just passed away? They may not be in the right mental state to get that task done. Even though we're conducting business, I've got to still be able to understand that individual's personal needs and say, hey, you know what? No one's going to die if that task doesn't get done today. I need you to go take care of yourself for a moment. Right? That self-care. Like, I encourage my people to perform the self-care because that means when I get them, I'm going to get high quality work. And that high quality work, I will take 1 hour. I will even take 1 hour, in some cases, 1 hour a week of high quality work than 40 hours of mediocre.
Yeah, because I think we would probably agree that 1 hour far surpasses the 40 hours of mediocre.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go back and touch on one thing that you said there in terms of like average leaders, great leaders. I actually think that's really it. Good leaders are the ones that are choosing to figure out how to be great. That's their transition. Mm-hmm. And those ones, I believe, eventually become that. And really, I don't even say average. It's basically, to me, you're a bad leader or you're aspiring to be a great leader and you're doing those things and eventually you'll achieve it. That might take you 50 years, but you're working on it and people are going to notice that and they're still going to want to follow you. And you're going to be like, hey, I make mistakes. And then there are those great leaders. I feel like I'm, and maybe this gets back into my overall imposter syndrome. I think I'm a good leader. I'm still transitioning and trying to find ways of greatness. And I feel like I have moments of greatness, but I don't feel like I've achieved greatness.
That's an interesting way to frame it. Yeah. I think yes, in your mind you haven't achieved what you think you're capable of, and I don't know that you ever will. We've had that conversation, right?
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. I've been around enough people that I feel confident in saying that you're a great leader.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, well, and I'm just being honest, right? I wouldn't bullshit you.
Well, yeah.
Um,
I would hope not. It doesn't do any of us any good. And I think that's a big problem. People will bullshit you, and they're actually doing that person a disservice by not trying to show them what the truth is.
See, and that's the thing. Speaking from the follower side of the equation, and especially at the level I'm at, what do I have to lose by telling the truth? I mean, what are you going to do? Get mad at me? Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, if that's what severs our relationship, then I guess it wasn't a good relationship to begin with, was it? Right? I mean, but that's the nature
Sure.
of part of what we're talking about too, is we've had these iterations over years of building up the trust and sincerity, even though sometimes it's brutal. And I don't know that we've ever had that moment, except that one time we had a miscommunication, which we can talk about if you want. But we've also both been around in some cases the exact same person that I think was a bad leader. And like, here's a dead giveaway. I was talking to Mrs. Pittman about this the other day because once again, I'm in the fortunate, given this conversation, situation of having two different leaders in two different places. And one's really fucking good and one not so much. And one of the big differences that's a dead giveaway if you're paying attention is one gives a shit about what I want and what I think I'm best at and puts me in the position to do that because I'm a weapon and I'm a tool. You have to use me, but you have to use me the right way to maximize my performance. The other person never asks, doesn't care, and when I say it, doesn't listen.
That's why you were able to become my Darth Vader to me being Sidious.
Yeah, right. Right.
I had to know whether or not you or Michelle was going to be it. And we found that out. I've got the video.
You know, and to that point too, I don't think TK would bullshit you. And he said it. I mean, on our podcast, the three of us, he's told you that.
Yeah.
And I think what enables you to be great, even if you're not your version of the great is, fair enough, right?
I have not yet achieved Muhammad Ali status.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough, right?
But I am prettier.
I think you're more attractive, to be fair. Yeah. I mean, if those are my choices, I'm picking you. I don't think I'd say it in a way that I think it's that you care about people. You do, even though sometimes you pretend like you don't. It's not that. It's that you're interested. We've talked about this before. You're interested in getting people into positions to be the best version of themselves. That's what defines greatness in terms of leadership. And like you really put the time. Tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think you spend of a 40-hour work week, right? But for the sake of argument, I don't think you spend 30 hours on here's the set of tasks on this project plan, and here's who's on which milestone, and here's the blockers. I think it's the exact opposite. I think you probably spend upwards of 20 to 25 hours on how do I get person X to be the best version of themselves, and then I'll figure out who gets on what milestone with what blockers and so forth and so on. I suspect that's the way you approach it.
Pretty close. And I only say it that way because at one point in time, that was true. Exactly the way you said it. Now, it's far less about, to me, the project plan, the milestones, the blockers, because I have someone that's focused on that. So I get to focus on, really, I honestly believe that higher up in the hierarchy you get, you have to look more horizontally across the organization to understand that every decision that's made is that how that's going to impact the entire organization and your customer base, not just, your silo. But then how do you put your people in a position for like succession planning so that way they start to build those same attributes? And so I spend probably now
80%,
easily 80% doing that, and focusing on strategy and even my own personal development, because although I got to get better, because why would someone follow me if I was an idiot? if I can't at least help them answer some things about their own professional development and technology choices and things of that nature, then what good am I? Why would you follow me? Because I don't have anything for you to learn from. And I think that's a big part. Like, I look at it as that, really that teacher student thing. And if the student can no longer learn from the teacher, it's time to find a new teacher. And I let them all know that. I'm perfectly, hey, at a certain point in time, there's not that I can't teach them. There's nothing that I can offer them at that place of employment that will help them to grow, because there's nothing there that I don't have a place to put them. I mean, it could be the size where it could be anything, but I definitely do that. And I spend, well, I can tell you, let's see. I spend at least only 5 hours a week do I spend in project status like things and who's doing what.
Right, exactly.
Maybe 5 hours.
I would have probably guessed a little bit more, but like maybe 10 hours at most.
Yeah,
right?
But because I have 2 people that report to me that's primarily what they're doing, and they now know my style, and they've bought into that culture that I've been building. Now, in the beginning where I'm currently at, it was much more because I had to get their buy-in. Now it's about 5 hours.
See, because I would argue to a large degree, both in the teams that I lead and have led, and I don't think I'm as good as you, because the nature of it is different.
No, that's why you're Vader and I'm Palpatine. I get it.
Well,
I survived through all 9 episodes, and you were only in 6.
Yeah, right. Well, hey, gotta leave them hanging. One. See, because I don't think I'm a leader. It's a fundamentally different role. I think my role is, if anything, more of as an inspirer, which is different.
Yeah.
But our temperaments are different, right? And so putting me into a position to actually lead people is not good. It's not going to end up well for anybody. But I think there's overlap between our personalities and our positions in that inspirational part, right? And so even in that context, there's this idea that in order to do that, if it's done well, most things, not everything, but most things ought to just kind of sort themselves into the right slots. Given another set of things that have been true, like you picked the right people, you put them into the right spots, they got coached and mentored correctly, and you've spent the time to the point of the whole conversation to get to know them so you can do those things correctly. I think that's where there's overlap in our experience.
Yeah, sure.
I don't aspire to be a leader in the strictest sense in the way that you do, because I understand that that's a limitation of my temperament. Like I don't want to be good at that. That's not what I want out of life, right? But inspiring people is pretty fucking fun and cool and rewarding.
Well, I think you're selling yourself a little bit short in the aspect of the whole paradigm of leadership, because you're not, I would say, you don't necessarily like the spotlight and having multitudes of people coming to you for, Jason, what do I need to do? You want a small select of people that you can mentor and help them achieve their things, but you want it to be small, and you don't want, like, you're not looking for like board of directors to be coming to you. You're not looking for all this. You want to be like, I want to lead people in this one particular niche. I don't want to go outside of that. And then whatever that niche happens to be at that particular time, whether it be some of the research projects, whether it be doing like CCDC teams where you were leading that, but you're not looking for that huge glory. You want to be really the behind the scenes person that helps other people achieve their greatness.
Yeah, that's probably a very fair descriptor. Sure.
Which is still leadership, right? You're much more of wanting to be that guide. Like, hey, let me help you. Hey, I could be your right hand person to help you like see some other things. I can help this person over here. And which is great. I mean, in many ways, it's that everyone needs. I mean, if we put it in like military terms, you're that sergeant major. You don't want to be the general. You don't want to be the colonel. Nope. Here it is. And I go back to the movie with the guy who does have one of the best mustaches around. I can never remember his name. But it's like, I think it's like Sam something, but he played in the movie. Yeah. We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson, right?
Yeah.
And he's a sergeant major, and the Mel Gibson character is talking around like, hey, in the tribes, if anyone was like older than you, they were grandfather, and he walks away. The sergeant major goes, any of you sons of bitches call me grandpa, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
That's like your character. That's you.
Yeah, right. No, I think that's an apt description. And what's interesting is I think, one, we only discover these things about ourselves through our relationships with other people.
Yeah.
Because you can create comparisons, compares and contrasts. But I think you discover how to pair with people that complement you instead of detracting from you, by building relationships and trying things.
Oh, you mentioned something really, really good there. So we recently promoted someone to the chief officer role. And I've had the pleasure of working with this individual for the last 18 months or so directly, always talking, encouraging to be better, and being there, working through some different things. And when the individual got promoted, I said, before it was announced, I said, look, one of the things you need to be very cognizant of here soon, not everyone's going to be happy for you. There's going to be plenty of people that are going to say, why you and why not me? Pay attention. Those are your detractors. And it's a good lesson because you now know that every way in which they were up to that point was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And just write them off, maybe give them other chances to see, but know that they need to earn that. And look at all the people, even those that didn't get promoted, that are clapping for you. Those are the ones you want to invest time in. And I find this, there are many people who aspire to be good leaders. And one of the things I think really does keep them back is they want to take that poor performer and spend time with them because that's what HR drives us to do, right? Like, oh no, these are opportunities for growth. No, this is like, that person is choosing to suck. They're choosing it. They have every opportunity to be better. And I am more than willing to work with someone that has a right culture fit, even if they're not technically astute in their capabilities at the moment. I can get them training. Now, there's going to be a certain point in time where no matter what we do, they may not just get it. Maybe they're only going to ever be just below average. That's fine too, because I can still have them do the tasks that are menial, that are repetitive,
right?
That I can't yet automate. And there's a place for that. But they spend too much time there. Part of building relationships is really looking at where does everyone sit in your galaxy, every star, everything.
Well said.
And know what they are. Some people just don't, they're so far away from the sun that's not working, and you should be the sun in your galaxy, right? Some are so far away from you, they don't deserve your energy. The ones that are close by, make sure they get it. Make sure they're able to get everything from you so you can build that. And focus on those people. And now, hopefully, those people are also investing into you. If they're not, over time, they should move further back in your galaxy. maybe even sometimes get a black hole in there so they can shoot off into a wormhole or whatever, but whatever it's going to do.
Man, for your leadership book, I think that solar system galaxy metaphor has a lot of legs, because it's through your gravitas as a leader, you lock your satellites into orbit around you, which is your purpose. As I say, it's your singular fucking purpose for existing. And that is, to me, the difference between a good/great versus shitty leader, is they understand that there's a sacred duty incumbent upon you when you take on that role. And there's also always going to be those asteroids, comets, planets, so forth and so on, that choose to stay way out on the periphery. And no matter what you do, you'll never be able to warm them with your rays. And so the best thing to do is to recognize that they're backpacks or anchors and let them drift off out of the solar system.
Well, it's funny you mention that from the book aspect, because it is something that it's on one of my chapter frameworks of that. Hey, these are the people you want to kind of focus on, right? And hey, some comet may come along and bump one of your planets out of its orbit, or a moon out of there. Anything can happen, right? Who knows? But I think it's important because there's many people that believe that you can build relationships in a group setting. And I don't believe you can. I believe that those relationships might be able to start in a group setting, but they're fostered one-on-one.
I'm going to tweak that a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't disagree, but I'm going to tweak it. The relationships you build in a group setting are group relationships, and that's not the same thing as personal.
Oh, sure, right. Fair enough.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I just think there's a way to tease that out, because I think you actually have to be aware and manage both of them.
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of things start off in a group. And so I'll give an example from a professional aspect. Let's say I have an idea. I want to go from Office 365 to Google Workspace. I posit this out, and I'm going to posit this out in a group. And I'm going to look for those that are detractors of that particular statement. Now, what I will do is I will individually meet with them. Now, hopefully I already know them a little bit, because I've had personal interactions with them, and work through each of their potential detractors from that project we want to start. Not all of them need to be resolved. Some of them just need a framework in order to test, to determine, should we keep moving forward? Right? And there's a big difference to that. And I think that's another little, and we touched on this, and it's funny to me, because I had never really said it out loud, but it was, I don't remember how many episodes ago, when you basically said, EQ is complete garbage. That was
the last RB episode, yeah.
Okay. And I've been thinking that for a little while. I'm like, started reading some of the stuff, and I'm like, but no, you're either invested in people or you're not. And there's no way you can, in my mind, there's no way you can potentially invest in people and help them if you've got like 100 IQ.
Right.
You've got to be a high IQ. I mean, above average, right? Maybe not even above average. I mean, maybe above average. So what? So average is what, 110? Or is 100 average?
100. 100's average.
100's average. So yeah, so if you're like 110, you might be able to. And what is it like? 2% of the population are considered advanced, which is what, 130 and above? Or no, it's 130 to like 140 is considered advanced, and only 2% of the population are there. And even less as you get higher up and higher up, higher up.
It gets more extreme.
Yeah. So I think you have to be above average to have a shot at basically being this, what people perceive as a high EQ.
Yeah. What? I don't think empathy doesn't exist.
Oh, I think it's completely different. You could have a high IQ and just not care about anyone, right? That's the empathy part. You could be like, yeah, I'm a selfish person, so I just don't care.
Most psychopaths have high IQs.
Yeah.
Well, because look, man, you can't be an active serial killer and be mentally retarded because you're not capable of planning and executing a plan because of your mental deficiencies, right? And so you're definitely above average. You're just probably so above average that you're divergent to a point where you don't possess empathetic, right? Okay. So anyway, putting that aside,
Yeah.
my point about like EQ is that it's like, to me, the thing about street smarts versus book smarts. It's a convenient way for people to hand wave away facts because IQ is inescapable. There's no escaping it, and to me, it's one of the most. I think the IQ problem that society faces in modern times is way more severe than climate.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
I think the IQ problem that we're experiencing is way more severe and way more catastrophic than, for instance, climate. But nobody wants to talk about IQ.
Well, so why do you think when you say there's an IQ problem?
Yes.
What is it that you specifically mean by that?
Okay, so it's a great question. Let me explain.
I am a doctor.
You're capable of understanding this. Don't worry. So over the
so actually, before you answer, so I'm going to say where my mind originally went with that is the movie. It's either called Idiocracy or Mediocrity or whatever it is, where all of a sudden, yeah. So in my mind, is it that is it that type of a thing, or you're thinking there's an IQ problem? Okay,
no.
All right. That's where I went. I'm like, well, I mean, maybe about.
No, because I actually that gets brought up sometimes in social circles I'm in around here in the South, and I actually don't think that's an accurate portrayal of society. Here's why. Over the last couple generations, global IQ has continued to rise generation for generation. So IQ rises, and so the median
average. Okay. So the median is shifting. Okay.
Yeah. So median or average IQ is always 100, but that's a sliding scale on a bell curve. Okay, and so we know what drives that. There's mountains and mountains of literature around this. Fundamentally, what drives it is, well, there's a better way to say it is there's certain predictors of IQ because IQ is fixed at birth. It's genetic. Prenatal care.
Well, 100% fixed at birth. I thought there was an aspect of environment that plays into it during the first, couple of years of development.
Yeah. I'm including that in that.
Okay. All right.
It's so like prenatal care, nutrition, your parents' education levels, their wealth. These are all predictors of future success, and some of those, not all of them, but some of those are specific predictors of a child's IQ potential, barring trauma, barring physical injury and shit like that, right? Okay, so
do you know what your IQ is?
I do.
So my mom used to always tell me when I took this that it was 161 for me, but then I was like, no, that seems really, really fucking high.
That is really high.
So I took one Sunday. And I've always known this part, and they break it down into multiple different things. I am really good at pattern recognition. I'm really good with the numbers aspects, things like that. But I also know I'm not very good, which is a detractor in some of the stuff from the IQ score, with being able to see the spatial aspect, like what's this, right? And so I took it, and it was, I'm not ashamed. It was a 148, so it's not like I feel horrible by that, but I'm like, oh, I wonder, what things might have also contributed. Maybe it was a 161 at one point. Maybe when I took the test. But I also do know, like for me, right, because they broke down, hey, you did this, you did this, you did this, you didn't do well here. And I'm like, well, yeah, I've already, always kind of known that like geometry is not something I enjoy. And so that's a part of seeing some of those things. But if it's a pattern, like line, this dot, follow the dots, look at those different things. What's different? What's going to be the next thing in that pattern? Yeah, those things I do very well with.
Mm-hmm.
But
right. We're talking about the IQ.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where I was going with that. And so generation over generation, globally, average IQ is rising. And that to consolidate what I'm saying, because I'm going to get to my point, is a lot of that has to do with rising prosperity. Right? There's more wealth, there's better nutrition, there's better prenatal care that's causing IQ to go up.
But are the extremes getting more extreme?
No.
Okay.
What you would call like true 100 is shifting to the, if you're looking at it to be the right. So it's getting higher, even though 100 is an average all the time, right? Okay, anyway, because of that, and because of our sophistication, specifically with digital technology, we're creating systems that somebody that is average or below cannot use because the gap is widening. And so that, I don't know if that's what you're asking about extremes, because it's not.
Yeah, right. But I mean, in a way, so the idea in that if these things are happening as more prosperity, which I absolutely agree with. I mean, we talk about homeless here in the United States, but many of the homeless have iPhones.
Look, and I'm not shitting on homelessness as a problem. It's a problem.
Right. That's kind of those are but that's the aspect that our homeless people have something that people in Africa cannot afford to get.
Well, right, to your point, I was going to say, I believe this.
Not everyone in Africa, certain pieces on the continent of Africa, like they don't even have running water in some of those locations, right? So,
well, I think the better way to frame it, because it's scientifically backed up, is on the average case, our homeless in the U.S. specifically are still in the 1% globally.
Yeah, sure.
And that's how big that gap is. And so that's happening. Part of this is the shift in IQ because of prosperity in the West compared to parts of South America, Africa, Southeast Asia, and shit like that, right? But then you have to pay attention to what happens, and you were talking about this with leadership, when you're on the higher end of high IQ, you're able to ingest and articulate and action information much faster. That's a hallmark of high IQ. And so those are the people that are creating technology, and it shouldn't shock anybody that the technologies because I'm part of that, create are built for people like us. They're not built for people that are an average or below average IQ. And listen, I've seen this firsthand. Remember how Mrs. Pittman and I met. We created point of sale software for fast food restaurants. And I'm telling you, the last build she produced before she quit and started her business, there is no way somebody that is below average IQ can use it. It's too complicated.
Is it complicated or complex?
It's complicated. There's too many options to manage. It's too much information that has to be balanced cognitively because it's just too rich. There's too much of it. It's too dense.
It doesn't surprise me.
What's that?
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, there's also a capitalistic aspect to this. Why would someone want to develop product for those that are not able to afford it?
The answer to that, as I conceive it, is the same reason why we don't develop technology for blind people or people that are color impaired or deaf. We don't fucking think about it.
Well, there's not a high enough market value for it. You need someone that's willing to go. I mean, that's the reality. It's just not that no one's going to develop a product for the 1%. Doesn't matter which side. I mean, maybe the top 1% because they're going to overpay for that. Like, there's only so many people that are going to get an Aston Martin, C40, which is, or whatever that one is, where they only make 40 in a year, right? Yeah, they can afford. The people that can afford that and that car isn't worth, I think it's like 2.8 million or something. That's what it goes for. Like,
Well, to be fair, why would you buy a British automobile?
what
What are you doing, dude? What are you doing? What are you doing?
It wouldn't be me. I'm just saying it's just like one of those, but there's people that want to. Right? I wouldn't.
Fools.
Yeah, I wouldn't. That's not what I would buy. But, you know, I'm also don't think I could buy an American car either. But
Yeah, amen. Brother. Amen. I told you. Remember what my father taught me?
yeah,
Kiss French and you drive German. Anyway, but this is a problem people don't want to talk about. And I'm not judging it. I've firsthand lived
well, but
it.
this gets back into the reason why you believe there should be a universal income. It's not necessarily that person's fault that they have a below average to average IQ. They're born, right?
Right.
It could be like, hey, maybe like, look, let's regardless of someone's potential wealth, right? The gene pool splits. And Albert Einstein, his child wasn't as successful as him. His grandchild wasn't as successful as a child. The great grandchild, no longer in prominence. Right? So unless everyone is like, if we as humans actually tried to breed ourselves like we do with dogs, horses, other things, be completely different.
Wait. Some people did try that.
Well, yeah.
Be careful, dude.
But what I'm trying to say is that's not something that you should do. Like, I mean, you may personally choose to do it for yourself. Hey, I want someone that has a probability of having higher than 140 IQ. Well, if I want that probability to be higher, I would need to find a mate that also would have a higher than 140 IQ.
Yeah, and then I have to have the wealth to sustain a lifestyle that can afford for prenatal care, and so forth and so on. It's a complex set of factors, but my point is people don't want to talk about it because it's dirty.
Yeah.
It's dirty. And people don't want to admit that there's a part of the population, half of it, that increasingly is incapable of participating in society. And what the fuck do you do with 175 million people that can't work at McDonald's? Like that's not a small number of people. And
yeah.
Anyway, man, that's my point about the IQ problem.
Got it.
That's my point about the IQ problem.
Well, I know you have a hard stop here, so it doesn't look like we'll get to our second half, and we'll pick it up next week.
We can roll a little bit. Let's keep going.
All right, we'll roll a little bit. All right.
Yeah, I'm on fire.
All right, so we're going to get into this aspect of, well, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, maybe other people burn a bridge. Maybe they burn it with you, maybe you burn it with them, and at a certain point in time, the bridge needs to be rebuilt. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say that I have a very difficult time allowing someone to rebuild that bridge with me. I have an extremely difficult time. And part of that for me is that I believe everyone has an opportunity to fail and an opportunity to redeem, but this shit ain't baseball. It's not 3 strikes and you're out. Like, hey, you fail on that opportunity to redeem, it's done, right? And I have a very, very difficult time with that. Well, sorry, that was the 3rd strike. No, you had your 1st strike. Okay, great. You redeemed yourself. You do it again, I'm out, right? I have a really, really difficult time because I believe that is a huge indicator that this is who you are. It's a pattern. And like I said before, I feel like I do really well with predicting patterns and I can see things over time. And if this happens, I'm just not going to waste my time. And that is that could be considered by many, and I do sometimes consider it myself, to be a flaw. That is something that I could, but I can also say that my experience has been the amount of times that I've gone to that next step. I don't know that there is anyone that has done that is still in my life.
Yeah.
Because it just happened again. So, not that there couldn't be someone. But that is something. Now, I also believe that about myself. So in terms of the opposite, mainly also because like if I keep doing this, then to someone, then they probably aren't that important, and I'm just abusing them anyway. And so I probably would give up because it's not a I only want to be involved in mutually beneficial relationships. Now, sometimes those mutually beneficial relationships aren't forever. And for me, especially if it becomes very one-sided on the other way, I can recognize that. I'll check out. But if it becomes very one-sided on my side, eventually I just kind of go, then I start trying to challenge, all right, well, why aren't you wanting something from me? Maybe it's just because, hey, they don't need anything. They just want to give, and they just kind of enjoy the company and, want to have a drink and talk about it. But they can offer me because maybe they're on their way out of society, business, whatever. And that's fine. You got to look at it for everything what it is. That person just wants to, hey, I just want some company. And, hey, tell me what's going on. And maybe I can give you some advice. I don't need anything from you anymore, but maybe I got something to offer you. Hey, fair enough. But if they're not on that part, it's like that, then I just kind of go, and this gets into this aspect back to cybersecurity. I don't think everyone has great intentions, and if it becomes that much, I go, wait a minute, am I going to owe this person this many favors, and they're going to call something in, and they're going to call something in I'm just not willing to do? And so I don't like that either. But I do think it's important, if you burned a bridge, intentionally, unintentionally, whatever it happened, and it's only the first time you've done it with this person, because, hey, we all have the moments. I think it's important that you get back to that building of the relationship. Maybe it's got to start back in a group. Maybe it's got to start with you extending the olive branch and just go, hey, how's it going? What's happening? Can we grab a cup of coffee? We'll go grab a drink. And just start it back off on trying to reconnect, not on that professional piece at first, because you know something about them personally, right? Hey, how's Jimmy? How's Susie? What are they like in the 5th grade now? How are things going? How's school? How are they doing with wearing a mask all the time? Like any of those things to try to get that over. And I think everyone should at least try to rebuild the bridge, even if it's rejected. And if it's rejected and you were genuine, I think that's the other part. As you're doing that, it needs to be genuine. Don't do it because you need something. Do it because you recognize you burned the bridge and you probably shouldn't have.
Yeah, because it's worth doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is an interesting place where I think you and I actually are very different. What's interesting to me inside of that is I don't know that we end up in a different place, but I think our relation to it and how we view it is actually fundamentally different. Because for me, it's my view of this second part of the conversation is driven through my special relationship with time. And so a lot of my relationships and how I view them are charted across a linear timeline. And what I mean by that is for a very long time, you know this, right? I've had this obsession with a very specific idea. And so all my life is driving towards that. And so to me, although I understand the language of building and burning bridges, for me, it's much more coupled around the idea of, are you on the train with me heading towards this destiny, or are you not on the train? and you can choose not to be on the train. There's probably a couple cases where I've had to kick somebody off of it because they were really egregious, but that's few and far between. And I really don't, even in those exceptions, stop to think about it past what this is just a segment of time in this journey towards this destiny that I've recognized for myself, and that's really the extent of it. The result's the same. The result's the same, and
Sure.
I don't know that. I don't know actually if I step back and think about it like really critically, because the nature of it isn't transactional. I don't think about people being on the journey with me because of how they're contributing to it. I just think about people like you. You've been with me for a long time, a really fucking long time, with one small, very short exception, which really was just a miscommunication.
Well, yeah, but even during that time, we actually still did a show once a week. There was a short little hiatus because of different things we had going on, but
that was scheduling,
right? But we even still,
we still did it.
Yeah, we still did it. And
that's my point.
Right.
We were still on this journey together. We're not headed towards the same destiny, I don't think, because we just aren't headed towards the same thing. But we're on the same path as long as we have been. And fuck it, man. Maybe we go the whole way. I have no idea. I can't see the future. Mrs. Pittman's been on the journey with me.
Yeah.
Ex-Mrs. Pittman's not. Right?
Right? I'm familiar with that also. Yeah, I get it.
Right. You know, you and I have had this conversation, and I don't mind saying it. TK and I have a very temporal relationship where we're loosely on the same path, but the paths we're on are so far apart that we don't always come together. And I think that's a fair way to describe it. I don't have a problem with TK. I don't know that he has a problem with me. I think he would tell me if he did.
Yeah.
But our circles are far enough apart that we don't always come back and forth, right? Ian's the same way. I love Ian. I know Ian loves me, but our circles are so far apart that we don't always have an opportunity in time to share that. And there's endless examples from my view of that. And I've often wondered why I have this view of what we're talking about. And I'll tell you what it is, man. I know exactly what caused it. And I've told you this before, but it explains it. When I was 5, I have an older brother and he got hit by a car. And because of the severity of that event, my parents had to abandon me by myself for a period of time. And because of where I was in my cognitive development, that did something to me. And I think that created this relationship I have with myself in time and space that I recognized. I mean, this is hindsight, right? I'm putting language onto something that at 5 I didn't understand.
Sure.
That there was this sense of me in the universe, and that ultimately is what actually, to me, what matters.
I thought it was when you picked up that gnome.
Well, yeah, man, that's a great story, dude. That's a great story. That's a great story. And that's how I view, like, even before when we talked about the first part of this, of recognizing how to inspire other people, for me not leading them. It's them to realize how powerful they are as an autonomic entity in the universe, which is different than leading them. I don't necessarily want to lead them to their goal. I want to get them up to maximum power so that they can lead themselves to the goal. There's a lot of overlap, but it's not the same thing.
No, it's definitely not. No, I view that very few people will I ever lead them directly to their goal. I've led them to a capacity in which they now know how they can achieve it on their own and have the tools to be capable of achieving it. And then from that point forward, I'm just someone that can now be, instead of a leader, that mentor. Okay, well, let me, you've got these things, you now know what to do, you now know how to do certain things. Now you just need someone to check your work. Hey, what am I missing?
And that's where you and I are different, because at that point, I'm gone.
Yeah.
I'm on to the next thing. And that's my relationship with time and space, is because now it's also about my journey. And time's moving forward, and I'm on this train headed towards this destiny. It's not better or worse, but that's just, to me, that's the best description of where you and I, as people, and our temperaments and what we want out of life, that's where we diverge.
Well, I think only maybe partially.
Yeah, I would agree with
Right.
that.
And the reason why I'm going to say that is, up until the epiphany that I decided I don't even know that I couldn't say that. I would say that I went from, I want to be the CEO of a publicly traded company, to, I don't know that I want that, but I know that I now know what my true end goal is, which part of that is to have, in being the CEO of my own company that I've created, that focuses much more on small business, executive coaching, and consult, and being a consultant in that way. So it is much more transient. Then they may refer me, they may be like, hey, this guy was great, he really helped me, but I'm now, it's a period of time, and I'm helping you to achieve some goals. I've given you the tools, I've given you a framework, I've shown you the way that I have built many teams across multiple disciplines in terms of the types of companies, and it is repeatable. It works, and I've shown you that. I've helped you to build that. You know how to do it. Now you might only call me in the, like in some people that use a chiropractor or something like that. Hey, I just need a quick adjustment. All right, cool. But so at one point I would say, yeah, you're absolutely right. But now I don't think so. I think our end goals are much more closer, or more closely aligned, in that I am looking at that. I want to help many companies achieve some goals, but I don't want to work for them. I don't, I want to give them my framework. And so that legacy, whatever I wind up maybe calling it, maybe it's the Nostradamus discipline. I don't know, whatever. But hey, this is the leadership framework I'm trying to make, which I think is different than many people implement. And part of why I think it's different, because I've never heard anyone else ever say this. And when I look at job descriptions of things, no one does this. I only ever want to hire junior or senior level positions, never mid. That goes even to manager. There's a junior manager and there's a senior manager. There's always middle managers, but that junior manager should get promoted into those positions. I don't ever want to hire anything middle. I want the extremes, because I believe that extreme, that junior person, they might check out. They might get a better offer somewhere. It could be anything. But if they are hungry, having those senior people there and me investing in those junior people, manager to manager, executive to employee, they're going to get quicker to mid. And that's what I want. How I believe the best way for the performance of any organization is how quickly can you get junior people to be competent at performing mid-level tasks. The faster you can do that, the better performance you get out of your organization.
Yeah, right. Because I think you would agree. And I do think, especially the older we get, there is more overlap, which is why I think as the older we get, the more time we spend together. But that's a side conversation. Because when I've encountered somebody that,
well, we literally, like, it's not possible for you to spend time with people to not wind up having some influences of what they do on both sides.
Vice versa. But
that's innovation, right? It's
that's a healthy relationship.
Yeah,
we ought to influence one another to the positive in both cases. I think you would agree. Tell me if you don't. That when I've encountered people that define themselves entirely, end and beginning and end, as mid-level, those are jobbers.
Yeah.
Right? Because anybody that can go from junior to mid-level tasks quickly is not going to end there.
No.
They're not going to end there.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you 100%, man, that that's the correct model, especially as we become, as a society, more technologically advanced.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard. Like, I mean, that's it's actually, because one of the things as a leader in this case, every manager, unfortunately, is scorecarded based on attrition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I know those junior level people, when they leave me, it's typically not because I'm letting them go. It's because they just got offered an amount of money that I am either unwilling or unable to match.
Right.
And,
Right.
and fair enough. I got the value out of you that was necessary, and you got value out of it as well. And now you have, I believe, overemphasized one portion of the true value equation. And salary is just one attribute. And some people overemphasize that versus others. I don't. I need money. Like, you know, anyone that says they don't really need it, they either really had it and they've got a lot of it, but they still can't. They got to buy things. Like, no matter what it is, you have to have money to buy things, like or have a skill that you can trade for, which is still value, right? You've got something you can trade for. So that piece, I only say salary is a piece of the equation, but it's my third most important.
What are your first two?
Me.
And necessarily so.
Right. But and I'm not saying that from facetiously, and I say that me. What is the opportunity I'm going to have to grow from that person that I'm going to entrust to lead me? Mm-hmm. And what's the opportunity I'm going to have to be able to grow the organization? Those are my top two. And it's both growth. I have to grow, and I've got to be able, through my growth, help the organization to grow. If those two things aren't there, then the salary has to be so obscene that it can only ever be two. But the delta between number 3 and number 2 is huge. I can say number 1 and number 2 might flip-flop in terms of importance at any particular time, but they have to be number 1 and number 2. Like, it doesn't matter which one it is. That's my top 3. And if those top, one of the, for me to go salary, because I have taken jobs where salary was number 1, didn't last long. 6 months. 6 months. Hated almost all 6 months of it.
I hope you write that down, because that's an equation to determine a high performer. Mm-hmm. If you ask somebody to rate their top 3 things, and they rate them 1 and 2 variable, but they're both 1 and 2, and then 3 is salary, not salary first or second, that's a recipe for a high performer.
No, absolutely. I do have it written down. I mean,
perfect. And I'm just pointing it out.
No, but it's right. It's extremely valid, and some people are going to rate that salary higher at a certain point in time. But I can tell you, the only time that I wrote salary as being the number 1, and it was a lot of fucking money for me at that time. It was 6 months, and I was like, I got to get the hell out of here. Like, this is, like, I knew it after like a month. Like, this, I made a bad choice. Now, how am I going to correct that? And that took a long time, right? You can only make so many bad choices like that. And that's fine. Hey, so be it. But you've got to, you have to work with the other people in the leadership team. Like in my case, the CEO, I let them know in the current place. Hey, look, my model assumes a higher level of attrition, because we're going to invest quite heavily in these people. If we keep them 2 years, great. We're lucky if we can keep them 3. It's highly improbable 4. That means we have to hire more people to account for that attrition. So we're always going to be a little bit overstaffed, but they're more junior. So you need that, but you're going to pay a less overall salary expense, and we're going to incentivize them to do certain things along the way. But with that, your other alternative is hire really senior people. If you want them, you're going to have to overpay because now they're so senior. Number one and number two are probably still important to them, but now you're competing compensation wise that also have a great number one and number two that are in high profit companies.
Right. Right.
So I think you can only do a couple of those, and you need to be heavy on the army of ants because one ant can't build shit, but a billion of them can build a cathedral.
Well, you want a couple chiefs and a lot of fucking Indians.
I like to say maybe an executive chef with a lot of different types of cooks.
Hey, fair play. Fair play.
Hey, I'm not looking to get Joe Rogan, and all of a sudden we get these compilation of stuff, and we're talking about political correctness, and we're being canceled by Spotify. After we get to like episode 1,000. What do you expect from a comic? Hey, he's really, really intelligent guy, but I mean, he's still a comic, and most comics that I've had the experience of, they're not dummies. They might be a little bit dark, but they know a lot of stuff. How else can they spin things, especially when there's hecklers and stuff?
Anybody that watched that video of him saying the word nigger, it doesn't realize how heavily edited that was. Those are the Plutos in my universe that I actually don't care that they exist. If you're so dense that you don't understand the motivation behind producing that video, I just don't have any words for you.
But I got to tell you, his response that he did on Instagram with all of it, he was either coached really well, which I'm not entirely convinced that he has someone like that. It was really, really good response.
I agree. And let's not undersell the value of the media coaching he's had as being part of the UFC broadcast.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, I got to tell you, like, this is like, there's a couple of times in my life where I can see the huge jumps in my ability to do things of that nature. The first one was that when I was at BA Systems, because they invested in public speaking because we would have to give oral presentations for our proposals. And so they invested a lot of money in order to do this. And then when I was at Good Technology, they invested quite a bit. Even though I was only there for a short period of time, but that was, hey, they went back on an agreement, and I don't play. And that was not the 6-month one. It was before Good Technology. That was the 6-month one. But they went back on an agreement. That's why I left, which we ended up becoming a great deal. But they put some decent amount of time in me working with PR, the public relations folks, and how to handle media and things like that. And then Rick at Fixmo invested some stuff into that. Silent Circle really didn't, which was kind of sad because they never went the media certification training. But those 2 times, and then, of course, while going from Fixmo to Silent Circle, the doctorate, those things are where the tremendous upward leaps in my capability to being able to handle public like that happened. Now, where I'm currently at, they've also invested in that. We've had quite a bit of media certification training, which is, we're in New York. I mean, it's pretty damn phenomenal. I mean, there's a lot of media there, and some good people, some good advice. So anyway, I don't know that we finished everything on the aspect of the burning of the bridges, but we might retouch back on it next week. But I definitely see where they're like. It was only up until I decided we were starting this distillery, and I came up with the plan as to what things needed to be, that I decided that I knew my path to CEO of a publicly traded company was no longer as probable as what I once wanted. It might still happen, but it's no longer at this moment in time my goal. My goal is to help a plethora of small businesses achieve publicly traded status.
It's interesting to me to wrap this up, how as much as we'll talk about building, maintaining, and burning and repairing bridges with like relationships between people, let's not sleep on that we do that to ourselves as well. And to some degree, I might argue that the bridges we build, maintain, burn, and rebuild with ourselves might be the most important.
Yeah. That might be a great thing for us to expand upon next week, that aspect of that. Because I haven't burned that bridge of being the CEO to a publicly traded, but I've certainly put that off on not the path I want to go down at the moment. There could still be an exit I could take. There's an off ramp that could get me back there if I so choose, but it's not the one that I want. I've gone a little bit of loop, made a westward connection on Route 80, and
well, it's like this quote, man. Maybe it's a good capstone for it, because I was thinking about when you told me what you wanted to talk about. I was thinking about it, and I came across this quote that greatness doesn't require an audience; it requires focus.
Yeah. Hey, there's no one forcing me to get up at the time that I do. There's no one forcing me to go to jiu-jitsu and get beat up every single time I go.
Right.
I'm doing it for a purpose.
Yep.
And I'm good. It doesn't matter, mental, physical. If you're not getting beaten up, then did you really have a good day? Whether it be mentally or physically. Otherwise, there's no struggle. There's no struggle. Can't make anything good to drink.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
Drinks are made in a crucible.
That's right. All right, my friend, as always, I know I kept you longer than what you wanted, but it was your choice. I did tell you at 8:30. Hey, we can cut it off.
It was voluntary, man. We had the roll going. I didn't want to interrupt it. Yeah. We're good.
Awesome. Well, my friend, you have a great rest of your week. And hey, see you next Wednesday at a minimum.
That's right.
All right, everyone. Take care.
Bye.